Hi everyone, and welcome back to another Let's Build profile, this time centered on an archetype with serious nostalgic value to me, the Crystal Beasts. Except this time, I'm also deploying them alongside the Valiants archetype, recently revealed for the OCG's next deck build pack, and a couple of other engines in play as well. Before I go on, mandatory disclaimer up front, that this is supposed to inspire you to build the deck better yourself. I'm not trying to build the best deck in these series of videos, it's more a proof of concept than anything else. Also, I will be returning to showing some replays at the end of this build in action, so don't worry about me leaving this off this time. So let's dive right into the essential Crystal Beasts into any modern Crystal Beast engine. There are two main monsters that we want to focus on here, and that's really part of the Crystal Beast value engine. The first is Crystal Beast Sapphire Pegasus. Whenever it's summoned, you get to place a Crystal Beast monster from your hand, deck, or graveyard face up in your spell or trap card zone as a continuous spell. So this crystallizes another Crystal Beast monster into your back row. You see, this is the major gimmick that the Crystal Beast archetype was launched with. It's that you get to place your monsters in the spell or trap card zone whenever they're destroyed. And then the whole entire archetype revolves around summoning those, or trying to assemble all 7 to make enough monsters for Rainbow Dragon. Nowadays, we're taking a theme in a slightly different direction, and we're just trying to make the most of the value of putting those cards into the spell and trap card zone, and then deploying them from there with the other cards we're running today. The other essential Crystal Beast that makes this engine worth it is new and currently only OCG only, and that's Rainbow Dragon, the Zenith Crystal Beast. Zenith is a level 8 Crystal Beast monster and the 8th Crystal Beast, but what it can do is whenever it is crystallized as a continuous spell, you can banish it to special summon a level 4 or lower Crystal Beast from your deck, and you get to tutor an ultimate crystal monster. When we're talking about ultimate crystal monsters, that's Rainbow Dragon or Rainbow Dark Dragon, and we're employing Rainbow Dark Dragon here because there's a slight off chance that in a pipe dream we'll be able to summon it with the amount of dark monsters we're running and the amount of dark monsters in our extra deck. So if you haven't figured out the potential of this Crystal Beast engine of just running these two Crystal Beasts, let me walk through the combo here and really enlighten you on this power. If you just open a Pegasus, you normal summon it, place Zenith to your spell or trap card zone, then use Zenith's effect to summon another copy of Pegasus from your deck and tutor Rainbow Dark Dragon, for one of your normal summons, you get 2 level 4 monsters, you get an extra Rainbow Dark Dragon back to the hand from your deck, and that's it. So not all that much too much of a swing of advantage, just 2 level 4 monsters on your board. However, what makes this engine so potent is its absolute consistency. Let's start off with Crystal Bond, which is the first and primary Crystal Beast spell or trap card support. And this tutors a Crystal Beast monster from your deck to your hand, and then it places a Crystal Beast with a different name directly from your deck face up into your spell or trap card zone. Now, instead of having to start with that Pegasus for your normal summon, you can use Bond to grab your Pegasus, set your Zenith right away, and then use Zenith's effect before you even have to normal summon your Crystal Beast Pegasus. So this really gets you started off with a kick, getting you a monster and a crystallized Crystal Beast. And what about searching this Crystal Bond? Well, that's what we have Rainbow Bridge for, as Rainbow Bridge can be used to tutor any crystal, spell, or trap from your deck to your hand. The final Crystal Beast support card we're running today is Crystal Promise, which is a normal spell from their first wave of support that targets a crystallized Crystal Beast in your spell or trap card zone and special summons it. So, if you have your Pegasus, you can normal summon Pegasus, put another Pegasus crystallized in your spell or trap card zone as a continuous spell, then use Promise on that Pegasus in your continuous spell or trap card zone, and then use that second Pegasus to put a Zenith into your back row, and then use Zenith's effect to get the third Pegasus out of the deck. Not too bad for a 2-card combo, and this really will keep on extending as we keep going through this deck and the sheer potential plays it has. But we're not talking about just Crystal Beast Pegasus, or Crystal Bond, or Rainbow Bridge as starting as a starter for your deck. You actually have plenty of other options as well, simply because Crystal Beast Sapphire Pegasus is a Wind Beast monster. and that means we can run Noble Knight's Shield Bearer. This was originally released as part of the Sherry LeBlanc support recently, but it can be banished from the hand or field to tutor a level 6 or lower wind beast, in other words Pegasus. Also, it carries another effect to banish a light monster whenever it's summoned to get an extra draw, which can just be fun for later in the duel. Since Shield Bearer is a warrior, that also means that Reinforcing the Army can be ran as additional copies of your Sapphire Pegasus. So out of this initial cards that I've already covered, all of these except except Promise and your 3 Rainbow Dragons are all starters for your Crystal Beast Sapphire Pegasus, and we're even going to add on more later as we go. And I've been talking a lot about combos about Pegasus, so let's shift to the other half of the namesake of this Let's Build profile, and let's talk about the Valiants archetype. For those of you that haven't been on top of the new card reveals recently about the Valiants, Valiants are a new pendulum theme that involves fusion pendulums and a lot of column spawning effects, and they even have a dice roll and a coin flip among their monster cards. But today we're just focusing on the field spells. Valiant's World Koing Vision and Valiant's World Shinra Bansho. For consistency's sake and to make it a little bit easier on myself, I'm going to call them blue and red effectively for the rest of this article. Blue field spell being the one with the blue card art, and red with the little bit of pink and red in its card art. So let's start out with this blue field spell. Whenever the blue field spell is activated, it places another Valiant's field spell from your deck into your opponent's field zone. So in other words, whenever you draw this, you can activate it to give your opponent the other one so you have both active on the board. This is important because both field spells give the turn player an effect, not just you. So you can use a field spell even face up in your opponent's spell or trap card zone. Well, I guess in this case spell card zone. What blue can do is that if there are 2 cards in the field zone, so if you have both Valiant's cards, which is odds are what's going to happen, you can target an effect monster in the opponent's main monster zone in the same column as a monster you control to then crystallize that opponent's monster, pushing into the back row as a continuous spell. If they happen to already have a set spell or trap in that back row, it actually destroys that set spell or trap before crystallizing the monster, so it can sort of serve as a dual removal if that's the case. On the other hand, the red field spell does the exact inverse. So this one, the turn player can target one monster card in their spell or trap card zone, and special summons it to the main monster zone in its column. Hopefully you recognize that this means that you can use this field spell to uncrystallize your monsters, such as just having 3 more copies of Crystal Promise, which makes that combo of getting your multiple Crystal Beast Sapphire Pegasus even more likely to happen, especially when we start adding on other monsters. So that can give you a ton of link material, Xyz material, or even more to play with as the duel goes on. And since these are both field spells, we can also easily tech in a terraforming, since that can search either one of your Valiant's worlds, and really get yourself started and treat it as having both. So it really is all about making the most of this Valiance and combining it with your Crystal Beast monsters. So now that we've covered the 2 core components in the namesake of the deck, let's talk about how we're going to build this out with additional engines to really support this gameplay and support its win condition. Next up is the ubiquitous Magician Souls engine, especially because so many of the cards I've been covering so far are spells. When you have this many spell cards in your deck, you can really make the use of Souls' first effect to send up to 2 spells or traps to your hand or field to the graveyard to draw that many cards, especially since you want to use your 2 Valiant's worlds, and then you want to get rid of the one you control so that way your opponent doesn't already have both of them active and ready to go to use against you on their turn. And as I've covered in my engines article before, the Magician Souls engine should almost always be ran alongside Illusion of Chaos now, since Illusion of Chaos is a new Dark Magician support card that can tutor Souls directly from the deck, as well as being a level 6 or higher spellcaster that can place itself back from the hand into the deck if needed. This is also important here as you can return any unsearchable card back to the deck to be searched later. So if, for example, you get really unlucky and open Rainbow Dark Dragon in your opening hand, you can place that back on top of your deck with Illusion of Chaos effect, so that way you can actually activate your Zenith effect a little bit later in the turn. We can also return a couple other clutch cards, which I'll go over in a little bit. So, I know I keep returning back to this, but we all got to keep coming back to the fact that this deck really is a tapestry of different engines that all come together to support the Crystal Beast and make the most of that value engine. So that theme is going to continue as we go on. But the next engine is actually Foolish Burial Goods. So this is like Foolish Burial, just it sends a spell or trap card from your deck to the graveyard when it's activated, and it carries a once per turn restriction. Goods has a couple of uses. In Sky Striker, it's used to send Metal Foes Fusion to the graveyard. In this case, we're just using that as another pseudo copy of Upstart Goblin. However, here, it can also be used for two other cards. The first is the newly revealed Bridge of Salvation, which can be banished from the graveyard to tutor a Crystal Beast monster and a field spell. Read this as tutoring your Pegasus and your Valiants cards, all for the small cost of just banishing it from the grave. Additionally, Bridge of Salvation is an effect that you can activate in the field, but odds are you're not going to be able to resolve that, as you require 2 level 10 or higher monsters with different types in the field in order to shuffle back all cards from hand, field, and graveyard as possible back into the deck. So this basically resets the duel if there are 2 level 10 or higher monsters on the board. Again, this isn't searchable by your Rainbow Bridge, so odds are you're not going to be able to pull this first effect off. But it's there as an option. The final target for Foolish Burial Goods that I'm using today is Until the Noble Arms Are Needed Once Again. Since this can be used to synergize with Shield Bearer, since it can be banished from the graveyard in order to special summon from your deck 1 Noble Knight with a different name from the cards you control are in your graveyard. And if you've already used 1 copy of Noble Knight Shield Bearer, it's probably in your banish zone. It's no longer in your hand, field, or graveyard, so that will not prevent you from summoning the second copy from your deck. So now that we've really got through all the starters that get you to Pegasus, let's just do a quick count. So you have the 3 Foolish Burial Goods that get you to Bridge, you have the Shield Bearers, the Reinforcement of the Army, the 3 Pegasus itself, the Crystal Bonds, and the Rainbow Bridges. So in total, that brings your total count of cards to get to your initial Pegasus summon up to 15. And no, that doesn't count if you get a Magician's Souls and have a Bridge of Salvation in hand, or some other niche scenarios where you use souls in order to get to that initial Pegasus. So, despite the fact that I'm running 47 cards in this draft build, you're going to be opening that Pegasus play and really being able to build from there. So what do you do if you do get 2 Pegasus out on the board, 2 level 4 monsters? And now, this enters the Rock engine, which is actually going to center around a disease monster, Gallant Granite. So this is just made with only 2 level 4 monsters, and after you summon Granite using your 2 Pegasus, you can detach a material to tutor a rock monster from your deck to your hand. I have 2 options in the deck. The first is Nibiru. For obvious Nibiru reasons, it can be used to prevent an opponent that's really comboing through and summoning a ton of times, and really can be used as an effective disruption if you need it. If they happen to break through your board, the rest of the board will set up in a little bit. The other option that I'm using is King of the Spies, Lord of the Heavenly Prison, sorry. And while Lord of the Heavenly Prison I've used before in my engine article to pull out Imperial Iron Wall, here it's actually just being used as an additional extender. Because you're running so many spell and trap cards, it can just be summoned from the hand whenever you activate a set spell. So if you, for example, get to tutoring your Lord of the Heavenly Prison, then set your Reinforcement of the Army, whenever you activate it for the first time, that counts as a set card activating, so you can summon that King from the Sky Prison directly from the hand. It also happens to be a level 10, in the off chance that you want to do your Bridge of Salvation, and it also is a Dark Monster, which works well with your Rainbow Dark Dragon. So now that we've talked about the rocks, let's move on to the core fusion engine of the deck, and yes, this is the Dragoon engine, supported by Red Eyes Dark Dragoon, 3 copies of Red Eyes Fusion, and then a single copy of Dark Magician and Red Eyes Black Dragon. This is nothing new. Folks have been running this engine for a long time. In the case of this deck in particular, I'm actually returning to this rather than something like Destiny Phoenix Enforcer, which is the new flavor of the game, modern game, let's say, because you want to have the disruption that Dragoon brings, and we're also about to run 3 Prod of Avaris to shuffle everything back to really make use of your engine, and you want to be able to summon something multiple times that has impact. And if you summon a Dragoon on both your first and second turn, you can really shift stances back and forth from being offensive and trying to disrupt the opponent's plays, and then shifting to be, well, I guess that's more defensive than offensive, and then shift to offense to bring out another Dragoon to try to clear their board if they break through your initial Dragoon. And that's really the importance of running the 2 Dragoon here. And then running all 3 of the Red Eyes Fusion is to really make use of that Verte effect. As I just alluded to, we're running 3 Pot of Avaris, simply because you're running so many combo monsters that will eventually end up in the graveyard, and that can really help reset your game. So let's just say you opened with a Pegasus. Pegasus summon into Zenith. Zenith summons a second Pegasus. Okay, great, that's 2 monsters. Assuming you opened any other spell, you can turn those into Gallant Granite, tutor a King of the Sky Prison, set that spell, activate that spell, summon your Sky Prison, and then use your Granite and your King of the Sky Prison for a Verte, and you already your Verte combo into Fusion, assuming you just had Pegasus and some other spell, means that you already have 6 monsters in graveyard. So Pot of Avaris really is just an extra draw 2 spell that has a side benefit of refilling your deck for future combos. Closing us out here, I just have a couple more tech cards. So I'm using a single copy of Eldritch the Golden Lord. This can be used to send an opponent's card to the graveyard, since you are running so many spells and traps in this deck. Out of the 47 cards I'm choosing to run here, 26 are spells and 2 are traps, so odds are you can use this as spot removal. It can also send a spell in your field to summon itself back from the graveyard, so that can be used as just another generic extender. And plus it's another level 10 monster for the Bridge of Salvation Pipe Dream. And then lastly, we're just closing out with an Upstart Goblin, just because there is so much search power, you can really turbo through your deck with all your tutoring, use Upstart Goblin to try to get to one of your other key cards. So yeah, this is the Crystal Valiant deck that I've really wanted to present to you and do this Let's Build a profile on. If you haven't figured it out yet, this is a hyper consistent build. So this isn't focused on a really low chance probability combo or an archetype that is just really needs to be unlocked, but rather it's about building towards that hyper consistent game state that you can rely on game after game, duel after duel, to put up a powerful board in the face of Dragoon. Hope your opponent doesn't break through it, but even if they do, you have answers for your next turn to try to break through their board immediately after. Unlike my previous Let's Build profiles, I'm not really going to spend too much time going through the rest of the extra deck since it's primarily staples, but I will just scan through these cards really quickly if you want to pause it if you don't recognize the small card art on my screen. So let's just flip through this really quickly. Alright. Next, and as I try to do with these Let's Build profiles, I'm going to next talk about some additional tech options or alternate directions you can take some of the deck. The first thing is expanding upon our engine a little bit. So the Magician's Soul engine can always be expanded by a copy 2 or 3 of Preparation of Rites, since that can pull your Illusion of Chaos directly from the deck, since it is a level 7 ritual monster. I'm just choosing not to run it here because I felt like I had enough search power, but if you want to go for even more search power and even more hyper consistency, this is a great option for you. As I also alluded to, you can choose to run a Destiny Hero engine instead of the Red Eyes Fusion engine into Dragoon. This is Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer. At the end of the day, you'd want to run this with a Destiny Hero Dasher and a Destiny Hero Celestial. However, this is less effective to have multiple copies of, since it does have a hard once per turn restriction on Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer's effects. If you don't like the DPE engine and you don't like the Dragoon engine, you can also look to doing a branded engine here. So if you use branded fusion, you would fuse using an Albaz, but you could fuse into a variety of different monsters to disrupt the opponent. One of which, and probably the primary option to go to, would be Mirror Jade, the Ice Blade Dragon. And where Mirror Jade comes into handy is that it can banish your opponent's monsters without targeting as a quick effect. Additionally, after it leaves the field by your opponent's effect or by battle, it can destroy all monsters your opponent controls during the end phase of the turn. So that can really stagger destruction to try to disrupt their board if they do get over your fusion monster. The other benefit to running the branded engine is that you have some other great spell or trap support cards that really go well with your Foolish Burial Goods engine. So you have Branded Condemnation, which can be banished from the graveyard to recover a branded spell or trap from your graveyard back to your hand. And also its first effect is just a great all-around counter trap. And the second option would be Branded Blade, which, while its first effect can just summon tokens by banishing branded spells or traps in your graveyard, its second effect can be banished from the graveyard to recover a banished Fallen of Albaz, or another monster that uses it in its text. Switching away from alternative fusion options to use alongside Predapant, Verte, Anaconda, you also have a couple other Crystal Beast options you can go with. For the hyper big power plays, look towards Crystal Blessing and Crystal Beast Ruby Carbuncle. Where Carbuncle comes into effect is that whenever it's special summoned, you get to special summon as many Crystal Beasts that are crystallized in your spell or trap card zone as possible. So you could theoretically place multiple Pegasus in your back row, special summon Carbuncle with your Valiant spell or with a Promise, and then you get all of those back road Pegasi back to your deck, or back to your field, excuse me. So this can be a way to just get a ton of link material onto the field. On the flip side, it's a lot less consistent than just this value engine that we're really included in the Crystal Beast side here. So, fully aware that this is an option. Be aware that you can choose to build your deck a little bit more in this vein, but I would just hesitate since that does sort of step away from the hyper consistency that I've really tried to focus here. And then lastly, you can always look at a Nemesis engine. So Nemesis Flag can recycle banish monsters. Since we already have pretty great recyclability from your graveyard, between Pot of Varus, between Sapphire Pegasus, so with this engine you really can start recycling your cards to a crazy extreme. And then also Arch Nemesis Protoss is really great at locking down your opponent's options by preventing monsters from being destroyed with a specific attribute, such as Dark if you call it Self. And then another Nemesis to run in that engine would be Nemesis Corridor. It's just a wind level 4. Again, another level 4 to pair with your Pegasi or anything else. Of course, you could always look to more traditional options like hand traps. You can also look to other themes, such as you can run a full Tri-Brigade engine or really lean into the whole branded side. I'm not focusing on that today, and that's not really the focus of this engine, but you can definitely look at ways to build upon your Ragtag Crystal Brigade and make it nice and bigger. So there you have it, folks. This was my way of utilizing the Crystal Beast value engine alongside a couple other engines to really make the most of the Crystal Beasts and to also deploy these new Valiants field spells in a perfect deck that melds well with them. Hopefully you see the potential of this approach, or at the very least what a hyper-consistent deck can bring you, especially if you have dependent combo chains you can rely on duel after duel, especially in a longer tournament if you are going to be playing a lot of matches back-to-back. And yes, as always, hopefully this inspires you to try to build the deck better yourself, or make the use of this Crystal Beast engine in a different way. I highly encourage that, and it's the best way to really make the most of a new archetype. So thanks for listening, and I'll be sure to catch you soon next week, and I guess later this week as well, potentially, with new profiles. For now, I'm going to turn it over to some replays to show this deck in action. So, Disembodied Quincy Voice, out.